I never thought the most painful words of my life would be spoken on the most important day for my son David. There I was, Josephine, 69 years old, standing in the reception hall I had paid for with my own savings. I watched my son take the microphone after cutting the wedding cake. The pale pink dress I had chosen for the occasion felt a little tight around my waist, but I had wanted to look elegant for him, for Rose, his new wife. I had spent $3,000 of my pension on this celebration, $3,000 that represented months of sacrifice, of eating rice and eggs, of walking instead of taking the bus, all just to see David smile on his special day. The music stopped, and all the guests turned their attention to the groom. My heart was pounding with motherly emotion, waiting to hear sweet words. Maybe a thank you for everything I had done for him these past 32 years. David cleared his throat, and his voice echoed through the hall. I want to thank everyone for being here on this special day for Rose and me. His smile shined under the golden ceiling lights. The room filled with applause. Then his eyes found me in the crowd. My chest swelled with pride, thinking he would mention me with affection. I also want to especially thank my mother Josephine for the money for this party. His words came out clear and direct. The room fell silent for a moment. I smiled, waiting for the rest of his speech. But what came next froze the blood in my veins. "But Mom," David continued, his smile turning strange, almost cruel. "The only way to make me truly happy is for you to disappear from my life forever." The microphone amplified every syllable. Every word stabbed my heart like a sharp knife. The guests started to laugh, first quietly, then louder. They thought it was a joke. Rose was clapping from her table, radiant in her white dress, as if she had just heard the funniest thing in the world. My legs trembled. My hands holding a cloth napkin began to shake too. The noise of the applause and laughter became deafening. 200 people celebrating the humiliation of a mother who had given everything for her son. Theodore, David's paternal grandfather, was the only one not laughing. His elderly eyes looked at me with a mixture of horror and sadness from his table near the dance floor. He had been the only one who didn't approve of this wedding from the start, always telling me Rose was no good for David. "Did you hear that, Grandma?" one of Rose's cousins shouted from the back. "What an honest son!" More laughter, more applause, more pain shooting through my chest like a spear. David stepped down from the small stage and went to kiss Rose. She received him with open arms, whispering something in his ear that made them both laugh. Probably something about me, about the burdensome old woman who would finally be out of their lives. I just stood there in the same spot in my pink dress that now seemed ridiculous, with my hair freshly styled from the salon where I had spent $50 I didn't have. The makeup I had so carefully applied that morning began to streak from the tears that refused to fall. But I wasn't going to cry. Not in front of them. I wouldn't give my son the satisfaction of seeing me broken after humiliating me like that. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the main table where the newlyweds were sitting. "Congratulations, son," I said in the calmest voice I could find. "May you be very happy." I gave him a kiss on the cheek, which he received with indifference as if it were an annoying chore. "Thanks, Mom," he replied without really looking at me. "And don't forget what I said, right?" Rose smiled at me with that fake smile she always had for me. "Thanks for everything, mother-in-law. Now David and I can start our real life." Her words dripped with sweet venom. I nodded silently. I walked towards the exit of the hall, moving slowly between the tables full of people who were still laughing and commenting on my son's joke. Some looked at me with fake pity. Others avoided my gaze completely. I reached the glass door of the hall. I looked back one last time. David was dancing with Rose in the center of the floor, surrounded by friends and family celebrating their love. Romantic music filled the air. No one noticed when I left. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. I got into the taxi I had called on my old phone and gave the driver my address. "How was the party, ma'am?" the taxi driver asked kindly, seeing my elegant dress. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." During the ride back to my small apartment, I made the most important decision of my life. If David wanted me to disappear from his life forever, That was exactly what I was going to do. I arrived at my apartment on the 8th floor of the San Rafael building at 11 at night. The elevator was broken again, so I had to climb all 8 floors in the heels that were killing my feet. Every step was a reminder of what I had just experienced. My old legs protested, but my mind was clearer than ever. I opened the door to my small 2-bedroom apartment. Everything was exactly as I had left it that morning when I had left, full of excitement to see my son get married. The green curtains I had sewn myself were still drawn. The kitchen table still had the unwashed breakfast dishes because I had rushed out to get to the hall early. I carefully took off the pink dress and hung it in the closet. It would probably be the last time I ever wore it. I put on my cotton nightgown and sat on the edge of my bed. David's words kept echoing in my head like a painful refrain. The only way to make me truly happy is for you to disappear from my life forever. Teasing. How had it come to this? At what point did the baby I had held in my arms, the one I sang lullabies to, become this cruel stranger who humiliated me in public? I remembered all the sacrifices I had made for him. When his father abandoned us, David was only 5 years old. I worked 3 different jobs to support him. I cleaned offices in the mornings, babysat children in the afternoons, and washed clothes for neighbors at night. My hands cracked from so much detergent, my back stooped from so much heavy lifting, but he never wanted for anything. When David wanted to study engineering, I sold the jewelry my mother had left me to pay for his university. I got $4,000 for that gold ring and those earrings that had belonged to 3 generations of women in my family. It's an investment in your future son, I had told him when he asked where I got the money. During his 5 years of college, I kept working day and night. He lived in my house, ate my food, I washed his clothes and gave him money for his expenses. When he graduated, I thought things would change, that I could finally rest a little, and that he would take care of me as I had taken care of him. But David got a job and moved into his own apartment without even asking if I needed help. The visits became sporadic, the calls shorter. And when he met Rose 2 years ago, he practically disappeared from my life. Rose never liked me. From the first day I met her, I felt her contempt disguised as fake smiles. "Oh, mother-in-law, what a cute little house." She had said that the first time she came for lunch, but her eyes scanned the place with disdain, as if she were calculating what everything was worth. She was the one who convinced David that I was a burden on their relationship. I overheard them once when they were talking on the phone and thought I was asleep. "Your mother is too dependent, honey. A woman her age should have her own life and not always be on top of us," Rose would say in that syrupy voice she used to manipulate him. And David, my David, would answer her. "You're right, my love. Mom has always been very intense. I'll talk to her so she understands I'm not a kid anymore." That conversation broke my heart, but I never said anything to them. I kept pretending I hadn't heard, that I didn't know what they thought of me. I kept cooking for David when he visited. I kept asking him how he was. I kept being the loving mother I had always been. When they asked me for help with the wedding, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Mom, we need your support for the celebration," David had told me 3 months ago. "Rose and I want something elegant, but our savings aren't enough for everything." I had exactly $5,000 saved in my bank account. It was my life savings, the money I had been putting away for a medical emergency or for my old age. Without thinking twice, I gave them $3,000 for the hall, the food, and the music. "It's the least I can do for your happiness," I told him when I handed him the check. He took it without even thanking me properly, as if it were my obligation. And now, sitting on my bed at midnight, I realized my whole life had been a lie. I thought I was being the best mother in the world, but in reality, I was raising an ungrateful son who saw me as a burden. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Josephine." It was the voice of Theodore, David's grandfather. "It's me, Theodore. I got your number from David's contact list." My heart sped up. "Hello, Theodore. How are you?" "Worried about you, dear. What happened tonight at the wedding was terrible. I couldn't stay quiet after seeing you leave like that." His voice sounded tired but determined. "Don't worry about me. I'm fine." "No, Josephine." "You're not fine, and I wouldn't be either in your place. That grandson of mine behaved like a scoundrel, and that Rose, that woman has been a bad influence from day one." The tears I had been holding back all night finally started to fall. "Theodore, I just tried to be a good mother. Everything I did was for love. And that's exactly what I'm going to tell them tomorrow when I talk to them. What David did tonight is unforgivable, humiliating his own mother in front of the whole family. You don't even do that to your worst enemy. Don't get in trouble on my account." "Trouble, Josephine? I'm 82 years old. At my age, the only thing I care about is justice. And what they did to you tonight was a terrible injustice." We talked for almost an hour. Theodore told me things I didn't know, that Rose had been bad-mouthing me to the whole family, that she had convinced David I was a manipulative and possessive mother, that several relatives had commented on how bad it looked for David to accept my money for the wedding without even showing gratitude. "Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to David." Theodore told me before hanging up, "That boy needs a lesson in respect and decency." After the call, I stayed awake until dawn. My mind was working nonstop, planning what I would do. If David wanted me to disappear from his life, I was going to grant his wish to the letter. But I wasn't going to disappear like a defeated victim. I was going to disappear with dignity, taking with me everything that rightfully belonged to me. And when they finally realized what they had lost, it would be too late to ask for my forgiveness. The sun began to peek through my bedroom window. It was a new day, and I was a new woman. At 8 the next morning, my phone started ringing insistently. It was David. I let it ring until it cut off. He called back immediately. This time I answered. "Mom, where are you?" His voice sounded agitated, completely different from the day before. "At my house, David. Where else would I be?" "Grandpa Theodore came to see us early. He's furious. He says I offended you last night and that I need to apologize immediately." I could hear Rose talking in the background, probably telling him what to say. "Your grandfather worries too much. There's nothing to apologize for." "But Mom, I was joking last night. You know I love you. It was just a joke to make people laugh." His lie sounded so fake it almost made me laugh. "A very funny joke, son. Everyone laughed so hard." There was an awkward silence. "You're upset with me?" "No, David, not at all. In fact, I've been thinking about what you said last night, and you're right. It's time for me to disappear from your life so you can be truly happy." "Mom, don't say that. I hung up the phone. I didn't have time for his lies and manipulations. I had important things to do. I got dressed in my best clothes and went to the bank. It was Monday, and I needed to take care of several urgent matters. During the bus ride, I thought about all the important documents I had stored at home. There were papers David didn't even know existed. At the bank, I asked to speak with the manager. Mr. Martinez received me in his office kindly. "Good morning, Mrs. Josephine. How can I help you?" "I need to review all my bank transactions from the last 5 years, and I want to close some accounts." While he printed the documents, I remembered every transfer I had made to David over all these years. Not just the $3,000 for the wedding. For the last 5 years, ever since he graduated, I had been sending him $500 a month for his extra expenses, $30,000 in total. "Here are all your transactions, ma'am," the manager said, handing me a thick folder. "Is there a problem?" "No, Mr. Martinez. I'm just organizing my finances. I also want you to help me with something else. I have a property that is in my son's name, but I was the one who paid for it completely. What are my legal options?" The manager looked at me with interest. "Do you have documents proving your payments?" "All of them. For 3 years, I paid the installments on the apartment where my son lives. 36 installments of $800 each. It all came from my account." "In that case, ma'am, you have a legal claim on that property. I recommend you consult with an attorney." I left the bank with a copy of all my bank statements. The evidence was clear. I had financed David's life for years, without him having the slightest idea of the real cost. Or maybe he did know and simply didn't care. My next stop was the law firm of Lopez and Associates. I had seen their ad in the newspaper and decided it was time to seek legal advice. The receptionist made me wait 20 minutes before I was seen by attorney Elias Lopez. Mrs. Josephine, tell me your situation, the lawyer said, a man in his 50s with a kind but serious face. I explained everything: the humiliation at the wedding, the years of financial support, the documents proving my payments for David's apartment. Elias took notes while I spoke. Let me see if I understand correctly, he said when I finished. You paid completely for the apartment where your son lives, but the property is in his name only. Exactly. I thought it was the right thing to do. I wanted to give my son security. Do you have any documents showing that those payments were a loan and not a gift? Not specifically, but I have all the receipts and bank transfers. Elias leaned back in his chair and looked at me with compassion. Mrs. Josephine, legally your situation is complicated. Without a document specifying that those payments were a loan, the law considers them gifts. However, there are some options we can explore. What options? We can demonstrate that there was unjust enrichment on your son's part. We can also argue that there was an implicit promise of care towards you in exchange for all that financial support. It won't be easy, but it's not impossible. I told him I would think about it. I needed time to process all this information. But before I left, I asked him one more question. Counselor, if I wanted to disappear completely from my son's life, what legal steps should I take? What do you mean exactly? Break all contact, so he can't find me. Start a new life somewhere else. Elias looked at me in surprise. That's perfectly legal, ma'am. You are a free adult. You can move wherever you want and cut contact with whomever you want. But are you sure that's what you want? More sure than I've ever been in my life. I returned to my apartment around noon. There were 3 messages on my answering machine, 2 from David and 1 from Rose. I didn't listen to them. Instead, I called Margaret, my next-door neighbor. Margaret, can you come over for a moment? I need to talk to you. 5 minutes later, Margaret was knocking on my door. She was a woman my age, a widow like me, and we had developed a solid friendship over the last 10 years. Josephine, you look terrible. What happened at David's wedding? I told her everything. Every humiliating detail, every cruel laugh, every round of applause that felt like a slap in the face. Margaret listened in silence, her expression growing more serious with every word. That boy is a scoundrel, was the first thing she said when I finished. And what are you going to do? I'm going to disappear, Margaret. Literally. I'm going to move far away from here and start over. Are you serious? Completely serious, but I need your help. I explained my plan. I needed someone I trusted to know where I was, but not to tell anyone else. I also needed help selling my furniture and packing my most important things. Count on me, Margaret said without hesitation. That son of yours needs to learn a lesson he will never forget. That afternoon, we started going through my belongings. I separated the essentials: my documents, some important family photos, my favorite clothes, and the few sentimental items I had. Everything else could be sold or given away. In the back of my closet, I found a box I hadn't opened in years. It contained letters David had written to me when he was a child, drawings he had made for Mother's Day, pictures from his birthdays and graduations. For a moment, I felt my determination waver. Are you going to take that? Margaret asked, seeing the box. I looked at the letters one last time. In one of them, written when David was 8, it said, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you, and we're going to live together forever. I love you more than the stars. I closed the box and handed it to Margaret. You keep it. If David ever comes asking for me, and he seems truly sorry, you can give it to him, but only if you are completely sure he has changed. The phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be Theodore again. Mrs. Josephine. It was a young woman's voice I didn't recognize. Yes, this is she. I'm Norma Rose's cousin. I was at the wedding last night. My stomach tensed. What do you need? I wanted to apologize for what happened. Not all of us agreed with what David did. It was cruel and unfair. Her words surprised me. Thank you for calling, but it's not necessary. Yes, it is necessary, she interrupted. Rose has been speaking ill of you for months. She has filled David's head with lies about you. Many of us knew, but nobody dared to say anything. What kind of lies? That you're manipulative, that you won't let him be independent, that you only seek him out when you need money. All lies. Last night after you left, Theodore told us the truth about everything you've done for David. This revelation confirmed what I already suspected. Rose had systematically orchestrated my exclusion from my son's life. Norma, I appreciate your honesty, but it's too late to change things. No, Mrs. Josephine, it's never too late. David is confused, but deep down, he's still your son. I hung up the phone feeling more determined than ever. Rose had won this battle, but I intended to win the war, and my secret weapon was something she had never considered, my own disappearance. On Tuesday morning, Theodore showed up at my door unannounced. His elderly eyes showed a mixture of determination and sadness that broke my heart. "Josephine, we need to talk," he said as he entered my small living room. "Last night I had a very serious conversation with David and that woman." "Sit down, Theodore. Would you like some coffee?" "Please." He settled on my green sofa while I prepared the coffee in the kitchen. "David is scared, Josephine. I think he's finally realizing what he did." I returned with 2 steaming cups and sat across from him. "What exactly did you say to him?" "I told him he was an ungrateful and shameless person, that no decent man humiliates his mother in public, especially after she paid for his celebration." Theodore took a sip of coffee and continued, "But Rose, that woman is poison Josephine. Every time David seemed willing to admit his mistake, she interrupted him with excuses." "What kind of excuses?" "She said you've always been very dramatic, that David was just joking, that the mothers in her family make jokes like that too." Theodore shook his head in disgust. "I told her that in my 82 years I had never seen such a cruel joke." I stayed silent, processing the information. I wasn't surprised that Rose was still manipulating the situation in her favor. "Theodore, there's something you need to know," I said finally. "I've decided to move. I'm going to disappear from David's life just like he asked me to." The old man's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I've already spoken to a lawyer and I'm organizing all my papers. David wants me to disappear, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." "But Josephine," he was confused, influenced by that woman. "Theodore David is 32 years old. He's an adult man who can make his own decisions, and he decided to humiliate me publicly in front of the whole family. That wasn't Rose's influence. Those words came out of his mouth." Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You're right. That boy needs to learn a lesson he will never forget. But I need to ask you a favor." "Anything you need." "When I'm gone, they're going to come asking you where I am. I don't want you to lie to them, but I don't want you to tell them right away either. Let them worry a little. Let them feel what it's like not to know where someone they love is. And what if they truly regret it? If David comes to you asking for forgiveness, truly asking, then you will call me and we will evaluate the situation. But it has to be real regret, Theodore. No more excuses, no more justifications, a complete acknowledgement of what he did." Theodore stayed with me all morning, helping me review important documents. When we found the papers for David's apartment, his eyes filled with indignation. "You paid for this entire apartment?" he asked, holding the transfer receipts. "Every penny. For 3 years, $28,800 in total. And David knows this. Of course he knows. He gave me the account number where I should make the transfers every month." Theodore was silent for a moment. "Josephine, this changes things. David doesn't just owe you respect as a mother. He owes you money as a debtor." The lawyer explained that it's legally complicated because I don't have a signed loan agreement. But morally, there's no doubt. That apartment belongs as much to you as it does to him. That afternoon, while Theodore was out for lunch, I received another unexpected call. It was Norma Rose's cousin, again. "Mrs. Josephine, I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Norma?" "Last night I was at David and Rose's house. I arrived just as Theodore was leaving after their argument. Rose was furious." Furious about what? Because Theodore had defended you. But what worries me is what I heard afterward. Rose was telling David that they needed to get rid of the problem of his mother once and for all. My blood ran cold. What did she mean by that? I don't know exactly, but it sounded threatening. Rose said something about getting you to sign papers to renounce any rights to David's apartment. Papers? What papers? I'm not sure. But she mentioned something about a lawyer friend of hers who could prepare documents so you couldn't bother David anymore in the future. This information confirmed my worst suspicions about Rose. Not only had she manipulated David into humiliating me, now she was planning to legally strip me of my rights. Norma, why are you telling me this? You're Rose's family. Because what she's doing is wrong. Rose is my cousin, but that doesn't mean I'm going to support her wickedness. Besides, I have children of my own, and I wouldn't want someone to treat my mother like that. After hanging up with Norma, I immediately called attorney Elias Lopez. Counselor, I need to see you urgently. I think they're going to try to trick me into signing documents. Come in first thing tomorrow morning, Mrs. Josephine. And don't sign absolutely anything without consulting me first. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was working nonstop, planning every detail of my disappearance. I had made a decision. I would leave on Friday. That gave me 3 days to finish all the preparations. On Wednesday morning, Margaret helped me contact a small, discreet moving company. The owner, an older man named Moses, agreed to help me move my most important things very early on Friday. "Where are you moving, ma'am?" Moses asked as he wrote down my information. "To Philadelphia." I lied. I had actually decided to go to Chicago, where I had a distant cousin I hadn't seen in years, but had kept in touch with through letters. But I couldn't risk anyone knowing my real destination. That afternoon I went to the bank again. I closed my main checking account and opened a new one at a different branch. I transferred all my remaining savings, $2,000 left after paying for the wedding, to this new account. I also went to the post office and rented a P.O. box in a different part of the city. Starting Friday, all my official mail would arrive there, not at my old address. On Thursday morning, as I was packing the last important things, David showed up at my door. He hadn't called first. He just rang the bell insistently until I opened. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. He looked agitated and tired. "Of course, son. Sit down." David looked around the apartment and noticed the boxes on the floor. "What is all this? Are you moving?" "I'm organizing my things. Your grandfather Theodore helped me realize I have too much stuff piled up." "Mom, about what happened at the wedding?" He began, but his voice didn't sound sincere. It sounded like he was reciting something he had rehearsed. I didn't mean what I said. I was nervous, I had a little to drink, and the words came out wrong." "I understand." "Rose says maybe you misinterpreted my words. That when I said to disappear from my life, I meant for you to stop interfering so much in my decisions, not for you to literally leave." There it was. Rose's version of events, perfectly rehearsed and delivered by David as if it were his own conclusion. "David, do you think I interfere too much in your life?" "Well, sometimes yes, Mom. Rose and I need our space as a couple." "You're right. That's why I've decided to give you all the space you need." "What do you mean? I'm going to respect your wish, son. I'm going to disappear from your life just as you asked. That way you and Rose can be completely happy without my interference." David turned pale. "Mom, don't say that. I didn't mean what, David? Didn't mean that you'd be happy if I disappeared from your life forever, because those were your exact words. 200 people heard them. But I was joking." "A very cruel joke. Don't you think humiliating your mother in front of the whole family after she paid for your celebration?" For the first time since he had arrived, David was speechless. I could see in his eyes that he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. "Mom, I'm sorry." "It's okay, son. It doesn't matter anymore. What's done is done." David left that afternoon, promising he would return the next day to fix things. But I knew it was already too late. Some words can't be erased. Some damage can't be repaired. That night, I finished packing my last belongings. Tomorrow, my new life would begin, free from the ingratitude and contempt of a son I had raised with so much love. Friday dawned gray and cloudy, as if the sky reflected my feelings. I got up at 5 a.m. and got dressed in my most comfortable clothes: black pants, a white blouse, and flat shoes. Today was going to be a very long day. Moses arrived promptly at 6 with his small truck. He was a discreet man who didn't ask unnecessary questions, exactly what I needed. "Ready, Mrs. Josephine?" he asked as he loaded my 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. "More than ready," I replied, taking one last look at my apartment. 22 years of my life were being left behind in that moment. Margaret came out of her apartment to say goodbye. She had been crying. Her red eyes gave her away. "Are you sure about this, Josephine?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And what if David really regrets it, if he comes looking for you?" "Then you have my new phone number. But Margaret, don't give it to him right away. Let him feel what it's like to lose someone important. Let him understand the value of what he had." We hugged for a long time. Margaret was more than a neighbor. She was the sister I never had. "Take care of yourself," she whispered in my ear, "and don't let bitterness consume you. You have a right to be happy." During the trip to the bus station, I remembered the conversation I had the night before with my cousin Rachel from Chicago. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, but when I explained my situation, she immediately offered to let me stay at her house for as long as I needed. "Josephine, this house is your house too," she had told me on the phone. "Besides, I could use the company. Ever since my husband died, the house feels so empty." Rachel was 71, 2 years older than me, and had been widowed 5 years ago. Her children lived far away and only visited once a year. We were 2 lonely women who could keep each other company. At the bus station, Moses helped me load my luggage onto the bus, leaving for Chicago at 8 a.m. "God bless you, ma'am," he said as he left, "and may you find the peace you're looking for." The trip would take 6 hours. As the bus pulled away from the city where I had lived my whole life, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. I was leaving behind everything I knew, but I was also escaping years of pain and humiliation. At 2 p.m, I arrived in Chicago. Rachel was waiting for me at the station with a huge smile and open arms. "Josephine, you've changed so much. You look older, but also stronger," she said as she hugged me. "The years don't pass in vain, cousin. Let's go home. I made your favorite food, mole with chicken, just like your mom used to make." Rachel's house was small but cozy, with a garden full of flowers and an orange cat that greeted me by rubbing against my legs. She gave me her children's old room, which was now empty most of the time. "This will be your home for as long as you want," she said as she helped me unpack. "Do you want to tell me what happened exactly with David?" Over dinner, I told her the whole story. Rachel listened in silence, interrupting only to make exclamations of indignation. "That boy needs a lesson," was her final verdict. "And you did the right thing by leaving. Sometimes the only way to teach someone your value is to show them what life is like without you." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly safe and valued. On Saturday morning, Margaret called me on the new cell phone I had bought before leaving. "Josephine, David came looking for you last night. He seemed desperate." "What did you tell him?" "That you had left, but I didn't know where. He went crazy. He started yelling that he needed to find you, that he had to apologize." "And Rose?" "Rose didn't come. Only David came, and he looked terrible. Dark circles, disheveled like he hadn't slept in days. He asked me something else. He asked if I knew when you were planning to come back. I told him I had no idea. He also asked if you had left any message for him." "Yes. I told him the only thing you said was that you wished him much happiness in his marriage and that you hoped he and Rose would be very happy without your interference." I could imagine David's face when he heard those words. I knew my son well enough to know that guilt would be eating him up inside. "Margaret, how did he really look?" "Destroyed, Josephine. Completely destroyed. He kept knocking on your door for an hour, as if he expected you to magically appear." That information gave me a strange satisfaction. It wasn't that I wanted my son to suffer, but I needed him to understand the consequences of his actions. On Monday morning, Theodore called me. "Josephine, where are you? David came to my house this morning crying like a child." "I'm fine, Theodore. I'm where I need to be." "That boy is desperate. He says he's made the biggest mistake of his life." "And Rose? What does Rose think about her husband's desperation?" Theodore paused. That's the interesting part, Josephine. It seems Rose isn't very happy with David's new attitude. They had a terrible fight last night. A fight David told her he realized how cruel he had been to you and that he wanted to find you to apologize. Rose told him he was being ridiculous, that you were just putting on a drama to manipulate him. Typical of Rose. But this time, David didn't listen to her. He yelled at her to shut up, that she was the one who convinced him to treat you badly. Rose left in a rage to her mother's house. This information intrigued me. Was it possible that David was finally seeing Rose's true personality? "Theodore, do you think David really regrets it, or is he just scared because he can't find me? Knowing that boy since he was born, I think he's genuinely sorry. But I also think he needs to suffer a little more to fully understand what he lost." "I agree. Can you give him a message from me?" "Of course. Tell him I'm fine, that I'm safe, but that I need time to heal. Tell him that when I'm ready to talk, I will contact him. And Theodore..." "Yes. Tell him that if he really wants my forgiveness, he has to prove he has changed. Nice words aren't enough anymore." On Tuesday, while I was helping Rachel in her garden, I received an unexpected call. It was Norma Rose's cousin. "Mrs. Josephine, I need to tell you what's happening." "What is it, Norma?" "Rose is furious because David won't stop looking for you. He's been calling all the relatives asking if they know where you are. Rose told him that if he continued to be obsessed with finding you, she would leave the house." "And what did David say?" "That's the point, Mrs. Josephine. David told her to leave if she wanted to, that he wasn't going to rest until he found you and apologized." My heart sped up. Was it possible my son was finally prioritizing me over Rose? "Norma, are you sure that's what he said?" "Completely sure. I was there when it happened. Rose became hysterical. Shouted that you had him manipulated, that you were a bitter old woman who didn't want to see him happy." "And David?" David stood up and told her, quote, "Rose, my mother raised me alone, worked 3 jobs to pay for my college, bought me my apartment, and never asked for anything in return. And I humiliated her publicly in front of the whole family. If that doesn't seem like reason enough to look for her and apologize, then you and I have nothing more to talk about." Tears started rolling down my cheeks. For the first time in months, they were tears of relief and not pain. And what happened next? Rose packed her things and left. David didn't try to stop her. I hung up the phone feeling that something had fundamentally changed. My son was finally seeing reality. But I still wasn't ready to go back. I needed to be sure that his regret was genuine and lasting. 2 weeks have passed since I arrived in Chicago, and my new routine was starting to feel natural. Every morning I helped Rachel with the household chores, in the afternoons we read together in the garden, and at night we cooked dishes we remembered from our youth. It was a simple life, but full of peace. However, the reports about David kept coming. Theodore called me every 3 days to keep me updated on the situation. "Josephine, that boy isn't eating well, he's hardly sleeping, and he's lost a lot of weight," he told me in his last call. "Yesterday I saw him at the pharmacy buying sleeping pills." "Has he tried to contact Rose?" "On the contrary, Rose has tried to contact him several times, but David won't answer her calls. She even went to the house to get more clothes, and David changed the locks." This information surprised me. For years, David had been completely under Rose's influence. For him to be rejecting her now was a radical change. "And what does he say about me?" "He talks about you constantly. Yesterday he told me he went to your apartment again and sat on the stairs for hours as if waiting for you to come back." My heart clenched imagining my son sitting alone on those cold stairs, finally understanding the emptiness he had created in his life. "Theodore, do you think he has truly understood what he did?" "I think so, Josephine. But more importantly, I think he has understood who Rose really is. The other day he told me he realizes she had been manipulating him for years to keep him away from you." On Wednesday morning, while I was watering Rachel's plants, my phone rang. It was Margaret, and she sounded very excited. "Josephine, you're not going to believe what just happened." "What happened?" "David hired Elias Lopez, the same lawyer you consulted before you left." I froze. "How do you know that?" "Because David came and asked me if I knew which lawyer you had spoken to. I told him I didn't know, but he kept investigating until he found him." "Why does he need a lawyer?" "It seems he wants to legally transfer the complete ownership of his apartment to you. He also wants to return all the money you gave him over the years." My legs trembled, and I had to sit down on a garden chair. "Is he serious?" "Completely serious. Elias Lopez called to ask me how he could contact you because David wants to do everything legally and officially. He says he doesn't want you to live another day thinking your sacrifice wasn't valued." After hanging up with Margaret, I sat motionless for a long time. Rachel came out to the garden and found me with tears in my eyes. "What happened, Cousin Bad News?" I told her the conversation. Rachel sat beside me and took my hands in hers. "Do you know what this means, Josephine? That my son is finally acting like the man I raised." "Exactly. But the question is, are you ready to forgive him?" That question stayed with me all day. Was I ready to forgive? Could I trust that this change was permanent and not just a temporary emotional reaction? On Thursday afternoon, Elias Lopez called me directly. "Mrs. Josephine, your son has hired me to draft some very important documents." "So I've heard." "He wants to transfer the complete deed of the apartment where he lives to you, valued at $45,000. He also wants to establish a compensation fund of $30,000 for all the money you gave him over the years." "Counselor, do you think this is genuine or just temporary guilt?" "Mrs. Josephine, I've seen many cases of family conflict. Your son is doing something that very few men his age would do. He is publicly acknowledging his mistake and is willing to pay a high price to repair it." "What do you need from me?" "Your presence to sign the documents, but I understand you need time. When do you think you might be ready?" "Let me think about it until Monday." That night, Rachel and I had a long talk in the kitchen while making coffee. "Josephine, what do you really want?" she asked me directly. "I want my son back, the David I raised, not the selfish man he had become." "And do you think that David has returned?" "The evidence seems to indicate so." "Then you have your answer." On Friday morning, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was David. Somehow he had gotten my new number. "Mom," his voice sounded broken, tired. "Please don't hang up." My heart pounded hearing his voice after almost 3 weeks. "I'm not going to hang up, David." "Mom, I don't know where to start." "Start at the beginning. I've been the worst son in the world. I humiliated you. I hurt you. I let Rose mistreat you. I have no excuse for anything I did." His words sounded sincere, heavy with real pain. "Why, David? Why did you do that to me?" "Because I was a coward. Rose filled my head with lies about you for months, and I believed her because it was easier than confronting her. She told me you were manipulative, that you wouldn't let me be independent, that you only looked for me when you needed something." "And you believed her." "I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because it was more comfortable to think that you were the problem than to admit that I had been a bad son." The pain in his voice was palpable. "David, where is Rose now?" "I don't know, and I don't care. I changed the locks on my apartment. I blocked her phone number. I don't want to see her ever again in my life." "Why?" "Because I finally see who she really is. A manipulative woman who destroyed my relationship with the most important person in my life, my mother." Tears were streaming down my cheeks. "David." "Mom, I've spent 3 weeks looking for you. I've been to every place I thought you might be. I've called the whole family. I even hired a private detective." "A private detective?" "Yes, because I need to see you. I need to apologize to you face to face. I need to hug you and tell you that you are the strongest and most generous woman I know." "David, I'm fine. I'm in a safe place with people who love me." "I know. The detective told me you're in Chicago with Cousin Rachel. but I don't want to show up at her house without your permission. I don't want to scare you or pressure you." I was surprised he had managed to find me, but that he respected my space enough not to show up unannounced. "What is it you want exactly, David? I want you to come back. Mom, I want to apologize to you properly. I want us to live in the same apartment that you paid for because it's yours by right. I want to take care of you like I should have been taking care of you since the day I graduated." "And what if I don't want to come back? What if I've decided I like my new life here?" There was a long silence. "Then, I will respect your decision. But before you decide for good, please let me see you one time. Let me show you that I've changed." David change isn't shown in one conversation. Change is proven with sustained actions over time. "I know, Mom. That's why I hired Elias Lopez. That's why I'm transferring the deed of the apartment to your name. That's why I've prepared a $30,000 fund to compensate you for everything you gave me. I don't need your money, David." "It's not my money, Mom. It's your money. Money that I owe you and should have paid back years ago. Money that allowed me to live comfortably while you were eating rice and eggs." His specific knowledge of my sacrifices told me he had truly been reflecting deeply on our past. "How did you know about the rice and eggs?" "Because I talked to Margaret, with Theodore, even with Norma. They all told me things about your sacrifices that I never bothered to see. Mom, you walked to work to save bus money while you were transferring $500 a month to me. David, please, Mom, give me one chance to be the son you deserve." The conversation lasted for 2 hours. By the end, I had made a decision. "David, I'm going to come back, but on conditions. Whatever they are. First condition, we live together until I'm sure you've really changed. Second condition, you go to therapy to work on your issues with manipulation and codependency. Third condition, if Rose ever appears in our lives again, I'm gone for good. I accept all conditions. Mom, when can you come back?" "On Monday, but you are coming to Chicago to get me. I want to see that you're willing to make the effort. I'll leave tomorrow on the bus." After hanging up, I sat in Rachel's garden feeling a mix of hope and caution. My son had said all the right words, but only time would tell if he had truly changed. On Saturday morning, I woke up with a mix of nerves and anticipation. David would be arriving in Chicago in the afternoon, and I still wasn't completely sure I had made the right decision. Rachel found me in the kitchen making extra strong coffee. "Did you sleep at all last night?" she asked, sitting beside me. "Very little. I can't stop thinking about everything that could go wrong." "Josephine, listen to me closely," she said, taking my hands. "You raised that boy. Deep down, he's still the child who wrote you love letters on Mother's Day. Rose confused him for a while, but the roots you planted in him are deeper than any woman's influence." Her words calmed me a little, but my heart was still racing. At 3 p.m, my phone rang. It was David. "Mom, I'm here in Chicago. I'm at the bus station. Can you give me Cousin Rachel's address?" "David, you traveled all night." "Yes, I took the 11 o'clock bus last night. I needed to get here as soon as possible." I gave him the address and sat in the living room to wait. Rachel had strategically left to give us privacy. "You two need to talk without witnesses," she had said before she left. 20 minutes later, I heard a taxi stop in front of the house. Through the window, I saw a thin man get out with a small suitcase. When he approached the door, I had trouble recognizing my own son. David had lost so much weight. His face was gaunt, he had deep, dark circles, and his clothes hung loosely on him. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. When I opened the door, we just stared at each other in silence for several seconds. Then David started to cry, like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a child. "Mom," he said in a broken voice, "forgive me, please, forgive me." He dropped to his knees on the porch floor and hugged my legs just as he had done when he was 5 years old and had done something wrong. "David, get up," I said gently. "Come inside." "I don't deserve to enter any place where you are," he sobbed, not letting go. "David, look at me." I lifted his face with my hands. "Look me in the eyes." His eyes were red from crying, but I could see something in them I hadn't seen in years. Genuine humility. "Mom, I've been a monster to you. I'm unforgivable." "David, get up and come inside. We have a lot to talk about." I led him to the living room and poured him a glass of water. His hands were shaking so much I had to help him hold it. "Have you eaten anything today?" I asked. "I can't eat, Mom. I haven't been able to eat properly since you left. Everything tastes like guilt." I sat across from him and waited for him to calm down a bit. "David, I need you to explain exactly how we got to this point. I need to understand how my son turned into someone capable of humiliating me in public." David took a deep breath and began to speak. "It started when I met Rose 2 years ago. At first, she was sweet to you, remember? But little by little, she started making comments about your emotional dependence on me." "What kind of comments?" "She said it was weird that a woman your age called me so much, that it was strange you always wanted to cook for me when I visited, that a normal mother would let her adult son live his life without interference." "And what did you think?" "At first I defended you. I told her you had always been loving and that I valued our relationship. But Rose was very persistent. Every day she would point out something abnormal in your behavior. Give me specific examples." "For example, when you asked me how my job was, Rose would say that was excessive maternal control. When you offered me money for some extra expense, she said you were trying to keep me financially dependent." It hurt to hear how Rose had systematically twisted every gesture of motherly love. "At what point did you start to believe her?" "I think it was when she proposed to me and you asked some questions about our plans. Rose convinced me that you were trying to sabotage our relationship because you didn't want to lose me." "David, I just wanted to make sure you were happy." "I know that now, Mom. But at that moment, Rose had managed to make me see every one of your actions through her filter of distrust. And the humiliation at the wedding. That was Rose's idea, too." David covered his face with his hands. "That was the worst part. Rose had been pressuring me for weeks to set clear boundaries with you. She said if I didn't do it in public, you would never understand that I wasn't your little boy anymore. She suggested the exact words you said, not exactly. But she told me I needed to be dramatic for the message to be clear, that I needed to shock you so you would understand that my new life with her was my priority. And when you said those words, what did you feel? In the moment, nothing. I was on autopilot repeating what Rose had programmed me to do. But when I saw your face, when I saw how everyone was laughing at you, something inside me broke. Why didn't you stop me right then? Because I'm a coward, Mom. Because it was easier to follow Rose's script than to admit in front of the whole family that I had hurt my own mother. David continued to tell me about the days after I left, how Rose had celebrated my absence at first, saying they could finally have a normal life, how he had tried to pretend he agreed, but inside he felt empty. When did you realize you had made a mistake? The second day after you left. I went to your apartment expecting to find you there, but Margaret told me you were really gone. In that moment, I realized that I had caused my own mother to flee her home. And Rose, what did she say? Rose said you were being dramatic, that you were probably at some friend's house waiting for me to come looking for you. But when the days passed and you didn't show up, even she started to worry. Worry about what? Because she realized that without you in my life, I wasn't the same man. I stopped being attentive to her. I stopped making plans for our future. I only thought about finding you. When did you decide your marriage to Rose was a mistake? When Theodore came to confront us and explained all the sacrifices you had made for me, Theodore told me things I knew but had chosen to ignore. He reminded me how you worked 3 jobs to pay for my college, how you sold your mother's jewelry for my expenses. And Rose, how did she react to that conversation? She got very angry. She told me Theodore was an old man who didn't understand modern relationship dynamics, that I was being emotionally manipulated by you through him. That's what opened your eyes about her. It was part of the process. But the defining moment was when Rose forbade me from looking for you anymore. She told me that if I continued to be obsessed with finding you, she would leave the house. And what did you say to her? I told her to leave. For the first time in 2 years, I chose to defend you instead of pleasing her. David told me how he had spent the following weeks, how he had gone to my apartment every day hoping I would return, how he had called all our relatives and acquaintances looking for clues to my whereabouts, how he hired the private detective when he realized I had truly disappeared from his life. Mom, these have been the worst days of my life. Every morning I woke up thinking about what I did to you. Every night I went to bed knowing that because of me, the most important woman in my life was far away, probably crying over the cruelty of her own son. David, how can I be sure this regret is real? How do I know you won't hurt me again as soon as another Rose appears in your life? Because I've learned the most painful lesson of my life. Mom, I've learned that unconditional love is rare and precious. I've learned that people who manipulate you to push you away from your family don't truly love you. I've learned that being a good son isn't something you can put off until it's convenient. David knelt in front of me again. Mom, I promise you on the memory of my grandmother, by everything that is sacred, I will never again let anyone get between us. I promise you that I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that the son you raised with so much love is still here inside me. For the first time in weeks, I hugged my son. I felt his tears wetting my blouse and his arms trembling around me. David, I whispered in his ear, everyone deserves a second chance, but this is your last chance. If you ever hurt me again, there won't be a third time. There won't be a need for a third time, Mom. This lesson will last me a lifetime. That night, David and I stayed up talking late in Rachel's living room. It was as if we needed to recover all the months of emotional distance that Rose had created between us. When Rachel returned at 10, she found us sitting together on the sofa with David resting his head on my shoulder like when he was a child. Is everything okay? Rachel asked with a smile. Everything is very good, cousin. David and I are going back tomorrow afternoon. I'm sad to see you go, but I'm happier to see you've solved your problems. On Sunday morning, as I packed my few belongings, David helped me folding my clothes with a care he hadn't shown for anything in years. Mom, there's something else I need to tell you, he said as he put my blouses in the suitcase. What is it? Rose tried to come back 3 times after she left. The last time she brought her mother and sisters to convince me to give her another chance. And what did you do? I told them exactly what I thought of Rose. I told them she was a manipulator who destroyed my relationship with my mother, that I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than get back with someone capable of such cruelty. How did they react? Rose's mother yelled at me that I was ungrateful, that her daughter had tried to civilize me and free me from your toxic influence. I told her the only toxic influence in my life had been Rose. I was surprised by the firmness with